Welcome to this Tutor2U Sociology topic video for Cambridge OCR A-Level Sociology on social inequalities. In this video we're going to look at the work of P.N. Rastogi and human capital. P.N. Rastogi is a study that is frequently referenced in sociology textbooks and exams when discussing gender inequality. Rastogi's research focuses on explaining gender differences in the workplace through the lens of human capital theory. In simple terms, this theory suggests that inequalities in pay, promotion, or employment status can be explained by differences in the skills, qualifications, and experience that individuals bring to the labour market. According to this perspective, men and women achieve different outcomes, not primarily because of discrimination, but because they make different investments in their career. Rastogi's work emerged in the early 2000s, a time when sociologists and economists were debating whether gender inequality could be explained by individual-level factors rather than structural discrimination. The central aim of the study was to examine whether differences in human capital, such as investment in education, work experience and training, could account for much of the gender pay gap and inequality in promotion. Rather than focusing on overt sexism or patriarchy, Rastogi argued that gender inequality arises from the different ways men and women invest in their careers, often shaped by family responsibilities and social roles. Theoretically, Rastogi's study sits within a functionalist or human capital tradition. This perspective assumes that inequality results from rational choices and differences in individual investment, rather than from structural power relations or systemic biases. It offers a micro-level, choice-based explanation of inequality. Men tend to prioritise continuous work, while women are more likely to take breaks or reduce hours for family reasons, leading to differences in accumulated human capital. On the Cambridge OCR specification, this view contrasts sharply with feminist, Marxist and conflict perspectives, which argue that gender inequality is rooted in patriarchy, capitalism and structural discrimination. Rastogi's analysis was based on quantitative data, using surveys and secondary data sets that measured educational levels, work experience, employment status and pay. The design is correlational, seeking to identify relationships between human capital variables and outcomes such as income or job status. Rastogi also employed a large sample, focusing on working men and women in different sectors. This reflects a preference for objective and statistical evidence typical of positivist or functionalist traditions in sociology. Using large-scale quantitative data has several strengths. It allows researchers to cover wide populations, identify statistical patterns, and quantify how much of the gender pay gap can be explained by differences in human capital. This can be valuable for policy making and for understanding the measurable dimensions of inequality. The approach is also replicable and helps provide empirical evidence for theories about gender and work. However, there are also clear limitations. Quantitative analysis cannot easily explore why women accumulate less human capital. It misses the social and cultural processes behind these patterns. It also risks ignoring structural constraints such as discrimination, workplace culture, and gender norms. The assumption that differences in skills and experience cause inequality may overlook how structural barriers create those differences in the first place. There are also problems of causality. Perhaps women invest less because they expect lower rewards, rather than the other way round. In short, while the data shows correlations, they do not fully explain the social realities of inequality. Rastogi's key finding is that a large portion of gender inequality in pay and promotion can be explained by differences in human capital. Men's uninterrupted work experience and greater investment in skills tend to yield higher rewards, while women's career breaks and family priorities lead to reduced opportunities. However, Rastogi also acknowledged that not all inequality is explained by these differences. There remains a portion that cannot be accounted for by human capital alone. This residual inequality points towards structural and cultural barriers, even if Rastogi's model does not focus on them directly. The findings therefore suggest a hybrid picture. Part of the gender gap arises from measurable differences in experience and education, while the rest stems from social structures that shape how those differences occur. The strength of Rastogi's human capital explanation is that it provides a clear, measurable mechanism linking individual choices and outcomes. It bridges sociology and economics, allowing inequality to be quantified and analysed using data. This makes it particularly useful for demonstrating how choice and investment can influence life chances. However, there are several important criticisms. First, the model downplays structural discrimination, assuming that the labour market is neutral, when in reality it is shaped by patriarchy, workplace cultures and institutional bias. Second, it risks victim blaming, applying that women's disadvantages are the result of their own decisions, rather than systemic constraints. Third, it ignores intersectionality, overlooking how gender interacts with race, class or disability to shape inequalities. And finally, the assumption that individuals make free, rational choices about work investment is unrealistic in contexts where caring responsibilities, gender roles, and social expectations heavily limit options. For Cambridge OCR sociology students, Rastogi can be applied in several different ways. Students could use their research to explain one reason for gender differences in pay, for instance that women invest less in human capital due to caring responsibilities, which limits their experience and earnings. Rastogi can also be used as a functionalist explanation of inequality. Students can evaluate it by comparing it with feminist, Marxist and Weberian perspectives that highlight the role of power, discrimination and social structures. Rastogi can be used to create balanced answers by providing empirical support whilst acknowledging its theoretical limitations. In summary, Rastogi offers a functional human capital explanation for gender inequality. They argue that differences in pay and status arise partly because of unequal investment in skills, education and experience. While this approach helps explain measurable patterns, it needs to be balanced against structural and feminist perspectives, which highlight how gender roles, discrimination and patriarchy shape those very investments. Understanding both sides gives a fuller picture of why gender inequality persists. That concludes this Tutor2U Sociology topic video for Cambridge OCR A-Level Sociology, looking at the work of Rastogi and human capital. Thanks for watching.